Like, I'd rather be in a series or if it's internet. I do know that. Yeah, that was marketing at a time. We're actually like, yeah. So I'm not proud of that one, but no, I did just read her they give you a bit like well, how did I know it was so good? It was just like I didn't have like was so good. And then I didn't know about what they were doing. I don't know why I didn't even look at it. Yeah, I did. And then and then Jill comes on this book, and then many different. Yeah, I haven't started it yet. I wasn't sure. I'll see if I do. It's not show at any of the 5 libraries for Disney. Or like but yeah, like and it was like I signed up for like I signed up too, and I have 2022, sorry. And Hamilton is like the first like book arc that I ever got. I think I read it a few weeks after I got it. But I read it and how did the kids say like holy or whatever. Well, whatever. No, that's an incredible. I mean, was this like sometimes they offer either you can quest it or you can pick it up. Yeah. Or but no, because it's a new author too, and I think at least used to be much more like taking chances on, I guess, new members of interviews. And I finished it. Shit. I like fall writing out of I feel like I'm honest, you're in I'd be surprised. I shoot my shot a lot. Yeah. When I love a book, and I'll say, I've met Christina probably 3 times now. I just met them too when they came here. Years ago, then Ali and played read Christina. I still haven't read Ali. I will because they're coming out. Mostly
Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Marianne, and I'm the general manager here at East City Bookshop, an independent, community-minded, and woman-owned bookstore. Quick show of hands, can I ask who's been here before? Many of you, amazing. Is anyone here for the first time? Oh my gosh, all repeat customers. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you also for joining us online, whether you're here for the first time or not. We are glad to have you here as well. We are here tonight to celebrate Some Kind of Famous by Ava Wilder, a steamy and emotional small-town romance starring a disgraced ex-musician and a local handyman trying to resist their growing attraction for each other until a house renovation forces them together. If you're here tonight, you might enjoy some of our upcoming romance events, including a virtual event for Son of the Morning by Akweke Emezi on Monday, November 17th, or an offsite event for the deluxe edition of Brimstone by Callie Hart on Tuesday, November 18th, or you might be interested in checking out our Really Reading Romance Book Club if you haven't already. You can find more information about our events and book clubs on our website, eastcitybookshop.com. Before I introduce our authors, some quick housekeeping notes. If you have a cell phone, we'd appreciate you taking a moment to silence it. If you need a restroom at any point, those are upstairs right past the cash register. More importantly, you can purchase books by tonight's authors upstairs at the cash register or on our website. And we'll have a discussion followed by a Q&A and then a signing line. So you can ask questions in person or on Zoom using the Q&A feature. Now, I'm very excited to welcome Ava Wilder and Alicia Thompson to discuss Some Kind of Famous. Alicia Thompson is a writer, reader, and lover of baseball. She lives in sunny Central Florida with her husband, 2 children, and 2 cats named Luna and Pickles. Ava Wilder is the critically acclaimed author of How to Fake It in Hollywood, Will They or Won't They, and Some Kind of Famous. Her work is often described as gritty, messy, and raw, which is also why she is no longer invited to make the potato salad. She lives in Northern Virginia with her husband and their toothless cat. Please join me in giving Ava and Alicia a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
How are you doing tonight? Good. Okay. The short answer is all that I can really accept, so that's perfect. Well, first of all, just thank you so much for coming out, and I am thrilled to be here because this is one of my favorite bookstores in the whole country, and this is one of my favorite people in the whole country, nay, the world, because I don't know very many international people. So we're obviously here to celebrate Some Kind of Famous, Ava's third book that just came out, and I know this is kind of a dreaded question, but first, I would just love for you to tell us a little bit about the book.
Sure. So, Some Kind of Famous is a small town romance. It's about Merritt, who is a singer-songwriter who has kind of left the industry because she struggles a lot with her mental health and has sort of retreated to a small town in Colorado where her sister lives. And she has bought a house there that needs renovating. So she sort of gets involved with the local contractor who is kind of like the golden boy. Everybody loves him. She's got a bad reputation. Everybody is like, stay away from him. But she doesn't listen.
That's one of my favorite parts about the book, actually, is how much like they're kind of in lust with each other from like day one, like second one, but pretty much everybody is like, don't do it, don't do it. And I love that like whole period. Uh, so you mentioned the setting. I love Crested Peak, Colorado, this like small town that the book is set in. And I was curious, since it is a small town romance, but at least to me, it feels like it delivers on the promise of that, but it's also a little different from what you might expect from a small town romance. So I was interested, like, as you wrote it, what were you interested in kind of celebrating about that kind of setting and trope, and what were you like trying to subvert or kind of make your own with that small town setting?
Yeah, I mean, small town is not like my normal genre, as a reader or a writer because I think it can often be kind of like conservative coded. Like we do things a certain way here, not like big city sinners. Um, but this Crested Peak is based on a real town in Colorado called Crested Butte, which I didn't use the real town for a couple of reasons. The main one is that it reads as Crested Butt if you don't know how to pronounce it.
That's how I would read it for sure.
Yeah, so wanted to avoid that. And also, like, I think when you're using a real town, especially a small town, you, and it's not a small town where I have lived. I visited, but I've never lived there. So I didn't really want to tread on any kind of weirdness in terms of like, when you're dealing with a real place, you kind of have different considerations. So I wanted to be able to kind of use creative license and make things up, make up businesses, make up like the way the town is arranged and all that. But when I was there, if you like, it's like a beautiful, picturesque, like no chain businesses in town, like everything, like, candy colored facades on the, main drag, like these beautiful mountains, beautiful trails. But when you go to like the pizza place on the menu, there's a thing that's like, hey, if you want to like throw a couple extra bucks our way, like nobody who works here can afford to live here, basically. And it's like that was really, I mean, upsetting, but also like that is such a problem in these tourist towns where it's like they become so catered to the people who are visiting there, and so that the people who are living there and the people who are working there can't afford to live there. And that really sort of drew me in as like an interesting setting for a number of reasons. There's kind of a lot to dig into there.
Yeah, well, and speaking of tropes, to me, you are the queen of celebrity romance, which is definitely your usual milieu. And this is a perfect example of that. In this book, it's a celebrity normie kind of romance, which is a little different. But I'm just curious, what draws you to celebrity in particular? And I think, like you, especially love to explore people who have a complicated relationship with their fame, which is what I love. That's my catnip. So, what draws you to that?
I mean, I think it's so many things. It's always something that I've been sort of interested in as an outsider because it just seems like there it's a lifestyle with a lot of contrasts where it's like in some ways it's very glamorous, like everyone is very beautiful, they're like wealthy, they're kind of doing all these glamorous things, but it's also an industry that really like destroys people's lives. And it's also like often it often attracts people who like struggle with things like mental illness and addiction, and who are looking for kind of like that validation that is not coming from inside. And also it becomes like exacerbated by the conditions of becoming someone where like nobody ever treats you like a person ever again. So I think that's part of it. It just seems like a really psychologically like evil thing to do to someone to make them famous. And also I think for me, as kind of like a self-conscious person, it it makes it easier to write a book where it's like there's sort of like a distance between me and the character, because it's like obviously this is not my experience. This is not something I've ever experienced or anyone I know has ever experienced. So it feels a little safer to kind of get into some like real shit through that kind of like barrier a little bit.
Yeah, I know we're both big celebrity memoir fans and fans of a podcast that is no longer named Celebrity Memoir Book Club, which doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, one thing I'm always struck by in celebrity memoirs is how you think that all of their problems probably started with fame, but they didn't. Yeah. They were just exacerbated by fame. And it turns out that they were, had substance abuse problems before, had mental illness before. And yeah, it is quite a pressure cooker. Yeah. I also happen to know that we are both Juliet Naked super fans. I think maybe the last two on the planet are like definitely the best, the highest ranked.
I think we're up there.
Yeah. We are definitely up there, I think, considering that we talk about it more than I think most people do. And so if you haven't seen that movie, it's a movie about somebody with a complicated relationship to fame, where Ethan Hawke plays this guy who used to be a singer-songwriter in like the 90s and has kind of gone underground and has a very bad relationship with his, old self and his art. And there's this one part that I think about all the time where this other character, Chris O'Dowd, who's hilarious in this movie, by the way, he gets really mad at Ethan for not kind of like loving his old work as much as he loves that work, because he's a super fan of Ethan's old music. And he says, the art isn't for the artist anymore, that water is for the plumber. And it's kind of like a silly quote, like everybody's like, what are you talking about? But I think about that actually all the time. And your book is really, it's about artists, because we have Merritt, who's a singer-songwriter, and we have Nico, who paints, but kind of like is too nervous to actually share his paintings publicly with anybody. And then you're an artist, and I think you put a lot of your own feelings about art into the book. So I'm just curious from you, what do you make of that quote, art is for the artist, is not for the artist any more than water's for the plumber?
I mean, I think it's true and it's not true. I think the relationship that we have with our own work is obviously going to be different from the relationship that other people have with it, but it's like it is still valuable to us, because otherwise we wouldn't do it. And like I feel, and it kind of has to be very separate, otherwise it will like destroy you if your only like feelings about it are dictated by how other people feel about it. And that's something that I struggle with a lot, and was clearly struggling with when I wrote this book, because you have these two people who are kind of on the opposite sides of this, where Merritt is like, I don't know if I ever want to like make myself that vulnerable again by sharing my work with the world. And Nico has sort of been afraid to ever do it, because he's like, it's just about the process for me. It's not about anybody else experiencing it other than me. And that's sort of been, it's something that we talk about it a lot, but it makes me think of, because I write books that kind of have like get a very polarized reaction. So like if I listen to too many outside opinions, then it really like negatively affects my opinion of my own work. And I did an event for my second book, Will They or Won't They? And it was kind of like after it had been out for a little bit, so I was feeling a little bit defensive. I wrote another unlikable heroine in that one. And I was, getting all these reviews about how like she doesn't deserve happiness. She's like the worst, character ever. And so I made kind of an offhanded comment in the conversation where I was like, oh, she's a bitch, but like, bitches deserve love or whatever. Like it was ultimately positive. And then someone came up to me in the signing line and was like, I relate to her more than any character I've ever read. And I was like, and she said, and when you called her a bitch, it was like you called me a bitch. And I was like, that is a really important lesson to take away, because when I put these characters out there, it does feel like I'm being attacked when people attack them, but it's also like they don't belong to me anymore. Like everyone has their own relationship to them, and I can't let my own relationship affect sort of like leak into that because it's not really about me anymore.
And people do project all kinds of things that are like at some point not about the book, and they're just about maybe how they feel or how they responded to that character.
Yeah.
It is always a chilling moment when you create a character and somebody is kind of like, I hate this character. And you're like, I put a lot of myself into that person. Like, that's the closest character I've ever written. So thank you for that. I think even when I was on the first call with my agent, she was like, oh, your character's quite sharp, isn't she? Or something. I was like, uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah,
That
definitely did
is.
that on purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love that theme of art that you put in the book. And I think that's part of why it is so resonant is because like it obviously comes from like a very vulnerable and like deep place. And I think that comes through. And I love Nico and Merritt there. It's hard to pick a favorite couple of yours personally, but I think that they might be it.
Mine too.
I love them so much. And one thing I love is that they're very opposite in a lot of ways, at least on the surface. Like Nico is just so soft and easygoing, and he's just like, I love like this. There's this one part where he's like, "Do you like cinnamon rolls?" And I'm like, "You're talking about yourself, Nico, is what you're talking about." And also this very delicious cinnamon roll. And then Merritt is very like he even says that like the first word that comes to mind when he thinks of her is sharp, and they're just very opposite, and yet their hearts are both so big. And so I'm just curious, like in your mind, as you're crafting this story between the two of them, what do you think makes them perfect for each other? How do they complete each other?
Well, I actually I read a review that said it way not to be like I'm always reading reviews, but it just came out, so I'm seeing them a lot. But I read a review that put it much better than I ever could, which is that she's worried that she's too much and he's worried that he's not enough. And it's like, yeah, I didn't really think of it that way, but that actually kind of is it. But they are also my favorite couple because of the opposites attract element, because when I was writing it, I was just so like tickled by the idea of this woman who is like so worldly, so accomplished. Like she's at the top of her field. She's dated a lot of people at the top of her field. She's kind of had all these experience, and she is just like totally flustered by this like bro from Florida. And she doesn't know what to do with it, and is just like, why can't I be normal around this guy who is just like a guy? Um, and it's because they do have more in common than it sort of seems on the surface. So I wanted it to be like they really do have this very like, because I think that's sort of something that's part of her arc is that she has dated a lot of people who are more right for her on the surface. Like they have kind of like this intellectual intelligence, but he has like the emotional intelligence that she needs and that she hasn't found. And for her, like her being such her being who she is, like he's able to sort of take himself seriously in the way that he never has been able to before, or
Yeah.
feels like no one else has.
It's so beautiful. And can I just say, as a Floridian, I felt like you captured Tallahassee energy very well. And I can't explain that. I can't tell you what that is. I can just tell you that when he said he was from Tallahassee, Florida, I was like, that does track. Like I feel it very strongly. An FSU boy, I take it. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I was like, you know what? I feel it. You write some of my favorite tension and chemistry. I think everybody in this room can agree. Like it's just absolutely top notch. And I want to be able to put you there. So I want you to picture that I'm on a plane and you have sent me the manuscript, but it's not finished yet. And so I was kind of like, well, of course I'm going to read like whatever I can get my hands on. And so I want you to picture that I'm on this plane and I read this sentence that says, he kissed her like he knew this might be his only chance, like a starving man at a feast who'd forgotten how to pace himself. And then they're like kissing, and then it is just kind of over.
Yeah, it's over. That
And
was all there was for a long time.
and I'm like literally, I'm like frantically like tapping my phone. Like the Kindle has stopped working. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but like I must have more of whatever's happening in this book. Um, so I think that kind of just like push and pull and tension that you create is so good. And I'm asking this for myself. I don't even care if they hear this part, honestly, but like, how do you do it? Like, how do you do the chemistry and the tension? What are some of your kind of go-to tricks for this?
I mean, I really think it does just come down to attention. Like when they're together, they are so like focused on the other person and like also incredibly self-conscious about it, but it's like they can't really, that's kind of like their number one, like even if they're doing something else, it's like what's he doing? Like, why is he looking at me that way? Like, what's going on? What is he thinking? What am I thinking? Like, I think that's just sort of the main thing is that they are like honed in on each other to kind of like an embarrassing degree, because it is kind of embarrassing. I think.
But I love that even when they're like not around, it's like, wait, she was here. Wait, what did he say? What do you mean? You know, like they're
Yeah.
always their little ears are perking up at any given moment.
Yeah.
So a different kind of tension, obviously, but I love the relationship that Merritt has to her sister in this, because she has a twin sister, Olivia, who at the start of the book she's living with, and Olivia is a little bit like, you need to get out because like I'm ready for to have my house back, and you need to move on with your life. And I just love their relationship, because I think if anybody has a sister or a sibling, like this kind of dynamic where it's like you love each other more than anybody else, but you also hurt each other more than anybody else. And so I'm just curious, did you always know that this was going to be such a key relationship in Merritt's story? And what were you wanting to show about Merritt's like journey through her relationship with her sister?
I did always know it was going to be a key part of it. I don't know if I accomplished it because I've never had such a strong negative reaction to a character, especially a side character.
I
But
think you accomplished it.
yeah, I guess I did. I think it's a few things. I mean, I'm incredibly close with my sister. She's my best friend, and I wanted to sort of not pay tribute to that relationship, but have a character where that is like an incredibly important relationship to her. But also the way the book, the plotting sort of worked out is that Olivia also ended up being like the main antagonist and the main one who is like, you guys should not get together because I don't trust you. And I think I was trying to walk the line because obviously you need to be on Merritt's side because she's the main character. That I think I was a little bit afraid to have her have like transgressed too hard against Olivia in the past. So it makes Olivia's seem like she's overreacting. And it's like the relationship also, because it is a romance, that's sort of like a relationship that I wasn't able to get into in as much depth as if it were maybe a women's fiction book about like two sisters who have kind of like a complicated history. So that relationship is a little more broad strokes than maybe I would have liked it to be. But I think sort of the overall idea is that like, when you either are the difficult family member or you have a difficult family member, it's really hard to break out of the kind of box that you are put in or that you put the other person in, like because there's so much, especially if it's like a twin sister who is very gifted and also very troubled, and you grow up your whole life being compared to them and being scared for them, and wanting them to sort of figure their life out and being really afraid that they never will. And there's so much like resentment and kind of like all of these sort of complicated feelings that it's so hard to see the progress they have made because you're so scared of them backsliding, especially in this setting where it's like she comes to this town where Olivia has been living, and it's like, well, don't like fuck this up for me because I have like a good thing going and I want to believe the best in you, but I don't know if I can. And that was sort of what I was going for with that.
Yeah. And I thought it came through. I mean, it came through so beautifully because it is a very like complicated and nuanced relationship. Have you ever seen the movie Georgia
No.
with Mary Winningham and Jennifer Jason Leigh? Well, this is like off task, but I just think you should see it because it's about two sisters and it has a lot of these dynamics in it. And yeah, so maybe that's why I gravitated toward that relationship in particular because I'm such a Georgia mega fan as well. Um, and in general, I think your books just do such a good job of tackling like deeper, darker, kind of more grounded themes in romance. And for me, that's something I'm always looking for is I love my romances to feel grounded and real. And like these are people who are, struggling sometimes. So I'm just curious maybe it's a leading question, but like, why do you feel like those are an important part in a love story?
Because I mean, I think they're part of life, and they're things that probably the majority of us go through, and they don't go away just because you meet the person who's right for you. And actually they probably come up even more in those relationships because it's like you need to be your kind of true self, like the good, bad, and the ugly. And I do feel like my sort of view on relationships is what makes them last is not what you like about each other. It's whether you can handle what you don't like about each other, which is maybe why my books are not more popular. But But that is kind of my that is kind of how I approach it, because I do think that that's real. Like, you have to kind of go through the real shit together to know if you're going to make it.
Well, and I do think, as kind of cheesy as it sounds sometimes, it's true that like what romance novels are telling us is like who deserves love, and you're getting to see those people find it. And to me, I find something very beautiful about seeing people who, for whatever reason, either like because we haven't seen it before or because like we ourselves struggle with these kind of issues. And so, we're kind of worried like, oh, am I too anxious for somebody? Am I too fucked up for somebody? Is my family too weird? Or, whatever anxieties we have. I think that there's something just so beautiful about seeing people who have all of that. And it's like you can still find this person who is right for you. And it doesn't have to make everything go away. Like I was telling you even just earlier today, I love the class consciousness in this book in particular. It was one thing I was like, hell yeah, like I love a book that's just like aware of the economy. Cuz like you were saying, well, like you were saying, like a small town like this, it's like on the one hand, you've got the haves who, are the ones skiing and going to these like touristy little spots, and you have the have-nots, and they're the ones who are serving them their lattes and, getting them on the ski lift and all that. And I love that you kind of tackle that head on in this book where Merritt is, she's rich,
Yeah.
And Nico is not.
Well, that also feels sort of like a key part of celebrity normie romance, because this is my first like true celebrity normie where he's not famous at all. And it's like that is part of it, is that one of them is like not only wealthy but has this level of like social power that she's able to wield. And it's like, how do you kind of like navigate that and build what feels like an equitable relationship, especially when it's kind of like the genders are subverted in terms of what we sort of normally see as the person who has the most power in romance, where it's like the woman who is the more powerful one. So that was something I was interested in kind of tackling in this.
Yeah. And even, I mean, there's not a huge age gap, but even that comes into play because she's 5 years older than him. So there's,
It is funny seeing who considers that an age gap.
I know.
When it's the woman that's older.
I know. I really stumped somebody actually. We were recently at Steamy Lit together, and they had like these like pins that were like my kink is, and then you could write in what your thing was, and she said age gap, and I was like, what do you consider an age gap? Like, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious, like, what do you? And she had to really stop and like think about that, and she said 8 years, which I found interesting. Anyway, that's just a sidebar.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do think that is that's something that everyone has a different opinion on what counts. But some people will be like reverse age gap when the woman is older.
Right. You're like, how does that
Let's
make
think
any
about
sense?
that one. Yeah.
Reverse grumpy sunshine. You're like, no, reverse harem. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So as you touched on, one thing about Merritt with this complicated relationship to fame, and now she's in this like small town, and she has a lot of throughout the book, she has several moments where like she kind of almost hates when people recognize her, and because it always changes the dynamic, and like they almost can't be cool, they almost can't like help themselves. And so I'm just curious, this is like for my own edification. What celebrity do you think you'd be just like the weirdest around? Like if you met them, where you'd just be like, I can't even be a normal person. I can't like put a word after another word with this person.
Unfortunately, the answer is everyone, which is why I write celebrity romance, because I have like, I used to live in New York. Like I've been around celebrities, and every time, even if it's a celebrity I don't care about, it's like everyone gets so weird, including me. And it's like everyone's just like whole demeanor just changes. And it's like, what must it be like if every single interaction you have throughout the day are people being so fucking
Like,
weird
be
to
cool,
you?
be cool.
Yeah, and like half of their mind is like, oh my God, I'm going to tell everyone about this later. Like every single thing this person says and does, I'm getting ready to tell it to like every single person I know. And it's like, how do you have like an authentic like life and find authentic connections with people if that is sort of how you're treated by everyone? Like it's crazy. It would totally warp your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you can see why there's that like that trope where it's like she's the one person who doesn't recognize you, and you're like, of course you'd fall in love with that person.
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
just treat me like a normal guy. I love that trope, by the way. Yeah, one time when I was working at a law firm, not the toxic one, but when I was working at another law firm, this guy came in who was just like very tall and had like amazing eyelashes. Like I know this is such a romance novel thing, but like I've never seen eyelashes like that, and I was so flustered. And I was so embarrassed because I was like, I'm not this person. Like, I normally don't get like blushy and like I'm like dropping shit and stuff, but I was so flustered by it. So that's probably how I would be about any celebrity. And speaking of celebrities I'd be weird around, and as a natural lead-in, because it's Haley Williams' album release day, so to all who
A national
celebrate,
holiday.
yeah, totally.
Yep.
I also think like we're both very drawn to female singer-songwriters, obviously, and Merritt is a female singer-songwriter, you know, in the book. And so, what do you find so compelling about like that role and also the music? And then what of that did you put into this book with Merritt's character?
I think I'm just very interested in sort of like the double standard around female singer-songwriters versus men, because I think in some ways it is like a very masculine coded thing to be kind of like on stage, you're the center of attention, you are, it's like your art is your point of view, you're telling your story to everyone. And I feel like when women do that, they are often seen as like, it's kind of like a threatening thing. It's not seen as sexy in the way, I mean, to some people it is, but I
To
think
the right people.
to the right people it is. But I think like, and I think that's something that a lot of women who do that job really struggle with, is finding people who are not like really intimidated by that. Um, and one of sort of the passive inspirations for this is that years ago I read an interview with Nico Case, who is like an alternative singer-songwriter, and she was like, and I could be misquoting this and totally misremembering this, but she was like, I don't have groupies. Like when I'm out on tour, we'll all go out to the bar after, and like the men who open for me, the men in my band, like women will be all over them and no one will ever come up to me. And I was like, that is so interesting. And like, it's true. So I think that sort of element of like, you're doing this kind of like incredible thing, but also kind of punished for it in some ways, because it's like too intense for some people. That was a character that I was always kind of interested in exploring.
Yeah, I saw this on Twitter just today, which I'm embarrassed to admit I even lurk on Twitter, but it's because of Haley Williams that I'm doing so right now. But I saw something, it was about Ariana Grande specifically, and it said something like people love women with big voices until they use them. And I was like, damn, okay. Like I really sat with that one for a second. But yeah, and I think I was thinking about it because I was like, yeah, when a woman puts out, say, like a breakup album, it's such a thing that everybody is like, oh, okay, another breakup album, another bunch of, you know, love songs and heartache songs, whatever. And then it's like, if you ever listen to like Wither, Blister, Burn, and Peel, like all it is just, why don't you love me? You know, it's not like men don't do the same fucking thing. Um, so speaking of kind of on that topic, I love this one line from Merritt when she's thinking about an ex who, you know, is also a singer-songwriter. And she says, and then he wrote a song about it, that fucker. He's just lucky I don't write anymore. And it made me think about something which I think about a lot, which is kind of like, at what point do you have the right to write about your life? Because it's your story. And that's what a lot of singer-songwriters are doing, is they're writing about their emotional experience. And then at what point do you, you know, it's kind of like, well, is that wrong for you to be putting somebody on blast or writing this story that also does belong to somebody else? So I'm just curious about your thoughts about that, because I think it's interesting.
I also think it's interesting, and I don't really know if I have the answer. I just think all the time about like bands. I mean, like I was listening to music today and Don't Speak came up, and it's like, it's so weird that like Gwen Stefani wrote that song about her ex who was in the band and they like had to perform it together. You know, I just think it's like, I'm, and again, you and I have talked about, not to bring it this way, but Caroline Calloway, this is something that comes up with her a lot, where she is constantly talking about her exes and other people in her life in kind of a messed up way, and is like, it's my right because it happened to me. And it's like, well, it is, but also I think there should be, you know, some lines, some personal lines, but I don't think it's any of our place to say where that line is. But there's definitely times where it's like, I'm uncomfortable with how this person is expressing themselves about like a real person, and maybe not taking the responsibility they should to like protect that person. And like, maybe they don't want to because this is someone who really hurt them. But I don't think I necessarily have an answer, but it is definitely something that I am thinking about a lot, which is why I put it in the book.
Yeah, well, and it's so interesting to me because it's like we all, I think, kind of erroneously sometimes assume that songs are memoirs and that they are like personal stories, and they're not necessarily. It's kind of that poetry 101 thing where you're like, the speaker is not the poet. But then sometimes it's also like people hide behind that, where it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that is you though. You know, you are saying some pretty specific stuff. Yeah. I also, in addition to thinking about Juliet Naked and Haley Williams and all these other things that are living rent free in my brain, I think every single day about your newsletter where you had a picture of Meryl Streep doing a split in midair in Mamma Mia, and you said something like, "This is what writing my first book was."
Yeah.
Because the whole story was that like she didn't even kind of like know she could do it, but then
Yeah,
she
but
was
she
like,
did it.
"Let me
Yeah.
try it," and then it worked out. I mean, she's Meryl Streep; she can do whatever she wants. And so your first book was very like you just kind of had this idea, you were inspired, and you were just writing away. And now, obviously, this is your third book, and you know now that you're a little deeper into this, I'm just curious, like, how has your writing process changed, or how has like your relationship to writing, you know, kind of changed over the years?
It's definitely gotten a lot harder. Um, I think it's just like once you start having those kind of outside voices in your head, it's never that fun or easy ever again. I hope it might be one day, but I think it's also like, and then once you put out a few books, it's like, okay, what's the right direction for my career? Like, what are readers resonating with? What are they not resonating with? Like, should I do this? Should I do that? And also, it's like, what do I want to do on top of the already difficult task of writing a book, just like without any of that stuff? But I do feel like each book, for better or worse, is kind of like its own demon, I guess. Because the book that I'm working on right now, I like drafted it faster than I have any book since my first book, but it's also like way messier. And I think the revision is going to be like much harder. So, I mean, every book, it feels like you're writing a book for the first time. It's like I haven't learned anything from these last books. I'm just like way more self-conscious, basically.
But that's also what I think is so cool, just from like kind of watching, both reading your books and then like talking to you and knowing you as a writer, is that I feel like you're constantly challenging yourself and you're constantly like doing something different, doing something new, trying to think about like what keeps getting you excited or what keeps, you know. And so I think that's really cool.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like that's the only reason to do it because that's kind of the only thing you can control is your own experience working on it.
Yeah. And you got to write the book for your friends, if nothing else, because they want to read it.
Yep.
Like I've like been begging to read this one, like literally begging to read this one.
It's so bad
Actually
right
kind
now.
of embarrassing.
Yeah, it's for your own good that you can't read it yet.
I don't know about that. So, what was your favorite scene to write in this book and why?
So this was actually a scene that I wrote after I had already shelved it because I sort of had it in my mind to write it, and then I was like, okay, I've been told I should not work on this anymore, but I have to write this scene because it's like I could see every beat so perfectly. And I think it basically did not change at all throughout all revisions, which is the scene of their first kiss, which is the scene you referenced, which starts with them playing pool and having kind of like a vulnerable conversation and then ends with them kissing outside the bar. And it was like truly like it existed like outside of me. And I was just kind of like uh recording it.
Yeah, the
And
spirit was moving through
the
you with that
spirit was
one. Tell
moving
you
through
what.
me. And that's kind of like those are sort of like the best moments of writing where it's like I am literally just like taking notes from something else that's happening. I'm not like creating this. It just already exists.
Yeah. So I have one more question before we open up to audience questions, and it's kind of a big one. So
Okay.
if you can't answer it or you don't want to, that's fine. But what do you find exciting about the romance genre now, and what would you like to see change, or you know, a way to grow in the future?
You know, I looked at this question and I was like, that's a big question. I need to think about it.
I do appreciate
I
you
didn't.
saying that I sent them ahead of time and not being like, oh, like you're putting me on the spot. I do appreciate that.
What I think is exciting about the romance genre is that I just think that there's just like a lot of exciting voices in it right now and like sort of getting to know authors more and seeing how they're kind of trying to push the genre forward. Um, and especially like with sort of a lot of authors moving towards more of like a hybrid model where it's like they're not necessarily controlled by like traditional publishing gatekeepers. Like that is all very cool. But on the flip side, I think like inevitably when it's like so much becomes like dictated by algorithms in terms of what becomes really popular, you get a lot of kind of like very like it's dictated by tropes, it's dictated by sort of like sameness, like people kind of like this, so they want something that's similar instead of taking a chance on something that might be like unique or different, even if it exists. That is kind of a bummer to me.
Yeah, for sure. And a good reminder to like seek out things beyond the algorithm. And, you can't just go off what your FYP shows because it's going to show you the same 5 books.
Yeah.
Unless you were training it. Like algorithms can be trained. You can train for them to maybe give you different content. All right. Well, thank you so much. It was so fun talking to you, as it
Thank
always
you.
is. And
Amazing question.
normally we don't do it with microphones, but it makes it better, honestly. So does anybody in the audience have any questions?
I wanted to ask if there was any movie or TV show or any kind of visual media that you not necessarily take inspiration from, but that kind of like feeds your like romantic soul of like you love watching this story play out. Even if you've never rewatched it, I'm sorry, you think about it often, or any kind of visual thing, not a book.
So I'm going to repeat the question just for the the virtual audience, that basically it's, is there any visual medium, TV, movie that really fuels your romantic soul, which was a beautiful way to put it.
I know that is a beautiful way to put it. And I feel like I'm not actually very romantic, so I'm having a hard time answering that. I feel like this is an easy answer, but the second season of Fleabag. Yeah, truly, like when you look at art where you're like everyone involved in this was like they were tapped in, they were firing on all cylinders, and it's like I would love to make something that good one day.
So good.
This feels obvious, but given a lot of the characters are celebrities, I feel like I think of people like actors or celebrities that fit the personality, and then I think of other actors and celebrities that fit the look as described. Do you have any you want to share that kind of you visualize when you were writing for any of the characters from your books?
So the question is just if Ava has any particular actors in mind that she is visualizing, either personality wise or looks wise, to fit her characters.
I don't generally like to share those just because number one, I don't want to like ruin how other people picture them, and also because I'm writing about celebrities, I just don't want to make it weird. But I'd love to hear if you have people that you pictured.
Yeah. So Vampire Diaries for the second book, for will they or won't they? Just the vibes. Yeah. No, that's valid.
Yeah, no, that's totally valid.
So I read a book recently that I really liked, but when I looked at like the Goodreads reviews before, they were like really just dumping on the female main character and talking about like how insufferable she is. Like, and then I read the book and I was like, I do not get that like at all. But like in the romance genre, there's so many times where there's like enemies to lovers, grumpy sunshine, and it's like the guy is such an asshole, and the girl's like, oh my god, thank you so much. So like, what is I'm curious to hear, because like romance is so obviously men read it too, but the vast majority of readers of romance are women. So what do you think of like do you think that audiences are harsher on female characters and their traits? And I guess why do you think that, given that women are like heavily dominated the romance?
So the question, if I can summarize it appropriately, is why do women hate women? No, I'm just kidding. No, but the actual question, which was much more sensitively phrased, was basically, why is it that when you go on Goodreads and you read these reviews, people are like, the female main character is insufferable, and then meanwhile the guy can be a total asshole, and people seem to kind of give him a pass. Yeah, like they just find it hot. Yeah, so why do you think that is? And, has that been your experience?
I think number one, we just live in a society where internalized misogyny is very encouraged and not really questioned. And I also think in romance in particular, some people, and there's nothing wrong with this, some people prefer to read it as like a self-insert where it's like, well, this character didn't do what I would have done in this situation, so she's insufferable, she's a terrible person. Like they're not sort of looking to find like a flawed character. And I think also some people don't really like to see they don't like a mirror held up to them, maybe I'll say that. But I think in general, like, because I get this in reviews all the time, and I think people, this is a genre that people read for escapism and fantasy, and they don't want the reality of people's flaws. And I think when it's a woman, they are less likely to accept that than for a male character.
Yeah, I mean, just for the record, this is women supporting women up on this stage all day long. But I think that Celebrity Memoir Book Club podcast that we both listen to and talk a lot about, it pointed out that like it's so funny how you hear these celebrities talking about their parents and they will be so harsh on their mom, even though like she raised them and all that, but they'll be so harsh. And then their dad, who like wasn't around, was kind of a deadbeat, whatever, like he'll kind of get a pass.
Yeah, he was trying his best.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm very enlightened because I hate my dad. So I feel like I'm like one step past that. My mom's not watching, but if she is, she kind of knows anyway, I think. Anyway, any other questions?
Makes sense. I find yours to be very realistic and me wanting to watch the shows, like watch the movies. So how do you kind of craft?
So sorry, this is my job. I'm gonna,
No, you're
I
doing great.
have to have a job.
Yeah.
So basically the question was that a lot of times in these books where it's like fake movies, fake TV shows, whatever, they feel kind of fake. But Ava, because she's a genius, hers feels so real and so good. And I agree. Like I really want to listen to Merritt's music. I'm kind of angry that I can't. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so how do you do that?
Well, thank you. And thank you. I think when I'm making these characters, I spend a lot of time thinking about like where they exist in pop culture and like just sort of what kind of career it makes sense for them to have had. And so it sort of like comes from there. But I have learned that I shouldn't go into too much detail. I think too much detail really will kill it. It's like you give a name, you give a log line, and then you move on. It's like you don't want to tell too much. I made that mistake with my second book where it was like they're on a TV show and you actually need to know who the characters are, what happened in that TV show. It's been on for 10 years. I'm not going to do that again.
Well, yeah, it's funny because well, yeah, I don't even know what's funny. So I'm just gonna move on from that. Any other questions?
Okay, would you ever write a first-person dual POV romance?
So would you ever write a first-person dual POV romance?
The book I'm working on right now is first person. It's not dual POV. I don't know. To me, it's in my brain that dual is third and first and single is first. And I don't think that is like prescriptive to anyone else. That's just the way that I feel comfortable writing. But I've read, books of every POV and perspective that I've enjoyed. But I don't know.
I think I weirdly feel the same thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that until you said that. But it's like we have the same like Myers-Briggs type or something.
yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay.
What books have you read recently that you love and would recommend?
What recent books have you read and would recommend?
I haven't been reading a ton because I've been trying to work on my own book and it makes me feel guilty, but I'm reading A Gentleman's Gentleman by TJ Alexander, which I'm loving. Love all their books. Yeah, it's a delight.
There's a scene where they're like trapped in a wardrobe together. That's like my favorite.
Oh, I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, well, when you get there, let me know. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. Sorry, I'm just trying to make myself useful. Yeah, it was about the cameo, which I also will editorialize, say that I loved, where Nora makes a little appearance in this book. So could you just talk about what made you do that?
I think I was just trying to like build out Merritt's life back in LA a little bit more, and I was because I sort of her only friend was Olivia, and I was like, well, she had a life before she came to this town. Who would she have been hanging out with? And I was like, well, she's around the same age as Nora, and they were probably like running in the same circles. And that's sort of a good way. And, Nora was one of my favorite characters from the first book. So I was happy to bring her back and from like another angle. And it's also like, poor Nora, she is dealing with all of these people who are really troubled. But, kind of all got their head on straight eventually. But yeah, I thought that it just made sense. Yeah.
I feel like it also made it really well-rounded to me because it's kind of like in the first book, you know, obviously you're seeing it more from Ethan's perspective. And so, you know, Nora, she's not a bad character. You know, we all know that like she wasn't wrong for anything. Like he was troubled, he had his own stuff going on. But I love that in this book you kind of get the perspective almost of like one of Nora's friends who'd be like, "And what's going on with Ethan?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, Ethan's great." And he's like with this new woman who's also great. Like and
Well, and it was funny because it's like I do think sometimes cameos can be self-indulgent, and I didn't want it to be like I liked having it be from the perspective, like seeing Gray and Ethan again from the perspective of someone who's ready to hate them. That felt like it sort of took the edge off a little bit and made it like a little more like, oh, okay, they're actually doing okay. Like it's, you know, it's from sort of a neutral party is observing them.
Well, and it's part of almost like the little extra happily ever after that you get, where it's kind of like, okay, like if even Ethan's ex is kind of like, it's all
Yeah,
great.
no, they're
you
doing
know?
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't worry
then
about them.
I feel great about them. Yeah. Ooh.
What you would consider an age gap?
Oh, so a very highbrow question, which is what do we both consider an age gap?
I think if one partner is under 25, I would say 10 years, and if they're both over 25, I'd say 15.
I'm just gonna steal that answer because I really
Okay.
like it. I have to admit, I'm very impressionable, I guess, because when that woman said 8 years, I was like, that's the right answer.
Although-
That's the exact answer that I would also give. And then the minute you said that, I was like, actually, that's the correct answer.
Although I am a hypocrite because I do call How to Fake It an age gap, and I think they're like 27 and 39 or something. So that broke my rule, but I don't know. That's
think
close
that
enough.
counts.
Yeah.
I think some of it's in how it's written too, because there are books where that kind of lean into the age gap more, where it feels like it really is part of the dynamic. Like in this book, for example, I mentioned it just because I think that, you know, especially with that power imbalance and it being a little gender flipped from what you might expect, the age is part of it. And she even mentions a couple times, like, I am too old to be feeling this way, like to be feeling like a teenager crushing on this guy. But at the same time, it's not like a huge deal in the book. And so like I would not personally be like, if you want an age gap, like you've got to read this one. I think people would be a little disappointed if I did that.
Yeah.
Well, I would say a reverse age gap to make sure that people
Yeah.
knew the correct way that
It's
it
not
read.
an age gap, but it is a reverse age gap.
Right, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a square rectangle situation.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
What trope do you love to read and one that is not for you as a reader?
Ooh, a trope you love and a trope that is not for you.
You know, I'm not really like a trope motivated reader, and I had to realize that about myself. I'm more about like voice. Like if it's an author I trust, I will read anything by them. And if it's an author I don't trust, I'm like stay away from me no matter how good it sounds. Which is maybe a cop out answer, but yeah, it's more about voice and characters for me than about tropes, because I think any trope can be done well and it can be done badly.
I agree with that, but is there a trope that I guess like that the minute you read it, you're kind of like, I don't even know shit about this author, but I will read that because I love that. Or alternatively, one that you'd be like, I'm nervous. Like I'll try it, but I am nervous.
You know, I don't love like the ones that revolve around pregnancy, either like accidental pregnancy or like secret baby. Yeah, I mean, secret baby is like not a lot of people are trying that
Yeah.
these days.
That's bold. That is bold.
Although You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria, great execution of the secret baby trope, and that's like extra hard mode is doing that.
And it makes a book extra impressive
Yeah.
when you're like, I kind of should not like you. In fact, I will tell people loudly that I don't like this
Yeah.
exact thing, and yet you gave it to me and I ate every bite, you know?
And I mean, I love exes. I love exes who have to pretend they're together. Anything that's like really high angst potential, like I'm in for that.
Yeah. Any other questions? You got to get them out before the virtual people do, because they are on it, and then they're gonna. Okay, yeah.
No problem. It is not a celebrity book, but it is in the performing arts. It's about two musicians who play together in like a Broadway orchestra pit. And it's also epistolary, and they've been secretly like corresponding since they were teenagers. It's called Love Notes, obviously. Yeah, I'm working on it right now. I think it's gonna be good eventually.
It sounds so good.
I
haven't
hope.
read it yet, but it sounds so
we were
good.
talking-
And whenever I finally get to, I will.
We were talking a lot about it today, trying to work it out. But I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I am too, to the extent that I'm allowed. All right, I think we have time for maybe a couple more.
Yeah, you've written a lot about celebrities. I think a question of that of like everything feels so real, and that's what I was thinking about. What does research look like when you're trying to build a TV show or build like the contracts and stuff that they're doing, or is it all?
So the question is what research looks like when you're trying to build out like a fake TV show or their contracts or all that kind of stuff.
I mean, a certain amount of it is like it's just something that I've kind of always been interested in. So I've sort of like just built up this knowledge through osmosis through time. And also it's the understanding that like if I get stuff wrong, most people are not going to know because none of us are really in that situation. Um, but I'm definitely like, I mean, I have my sister-in-law lives in LA, so I'm like texting her a lot about like what like neighborhood would they go to if they like had to do this thing or but I feel like stuff like, what does a publicist do? What does a manager do? That's just sort of like something I've already been kind of interested in and just sort of know already or know enough that I can fake it convincingly.
Yeah.
Right, flawed or unlikable characters. And I'm wondering, when you first start writing a book, like creating new characters, what's your process for that and for like getting to know them and like maybe discovering or creating their specific flaws?
So the question is, first of all, are you sitting on a couch? Do you guys have a couch seat? How did you get that? Like you first come, first served? All right. That's great. So the question, if I can remember now that I've distracted myself, is how you go about crafting your characters and thinking about their flaws and kind of making them because they are so well-rounded and so real. Like I know these people.
Thank you. I think it's like there are certain things that you go into it knowing based on the premise. Like, will they or won't they? I was like, okay, it's two actors who hate each other. They probably hate each other because they're opposites. So, like, what are their personalities? It's very like, if this is true about them, then what else is true? You just kind of like, once you know one thing, it'll open up these other questions that you can ask and kind of like, it's very sort of organic. And then it's kind of like, well, what situation can I put them in to like bring this side out of them? And you definitely want to craft them to be like complementary to each other, where they, especially if it's like an enemies to lovers, where they bring out the worst in each other and then they bring out the best. Generally, you just want to bring out the best. But if you're trying to build conflict around like their character differences, then you want them to bring the worst out in each other. So it's sort of a combination of like the premise, kind of the situation, what sort of arc you need them to go through. But it's sort of, I guess it's kind of hard to like describe because it feels very like it just sort of happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's part of why your characters feel so organic because is probably because of that. And like it's almost like what you said earlier about how it's more about what they can tolerate that they don't like, where I love that journey that you go on where it's kind of like the absolute worst thing about you actually ends up being something that I love about you or that like I can learn to appreciate. I just think that that is such a cool journey. We have time for I think one more question before we move to this signing portion of the evening. So any, yes, in the back. Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite questions, like to be asked. So I love that you're getting this question. Basically, among the many, many, many things that are great about this book, it's like your side characters and this kind of whole cast of townspeople in this Crested Peak. So, do you have a favorite side character, or what do you like about some of these people that you've created?
I think, and now I'm like, am I even getting his name right? I think Larry, the who she knows from Poker Night and who also plays in the Grateful Dudes, the Grateful Dead cover band, who ends up also kind of playing an important role in sort of like the denouement of the story. I just kind of like an old guy with a ponytail,
Yeah.
just hanging around.
We love Larry.
We love Larry.
I love Nico's housemates too.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
a big fan of Joe and
Well, actually, he originally had a third housemate where I was planning on doing a thing where it's like you hear this housemate referenced all the time and you never see them, and then sort of in like the low point when they're moving out, he comes down and it's kind of like a Silent Bob moment where he like delivers like an incredibly meaningful like gives Nico some advice that it's like, wow, thank you, guy we're seeing for the first time, but it didn't end up working out.
that's too bad because I do feel like that is a very housemate thing is that
Yeah.
there's one that's just like in his room all the time. You like never see this person, but it's like we do have another housemate, I promise.
I forgot about that.
And that's the
You
wisest
brought them
one.
up, yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. All right, well, thank you so much, Ava, for joining us and for
Thank
talking about
you.
this beautiful, wonderful, amazing, incredible book that you can now get signed. So I will pass it on over to the eCity staff to tell you all about that.
All right. Thank you so much to Ava and Alicia. I'll let you go and they'll reappear shortly for a signing. Thank you so much to everyone for attending in person and online. We are so glad that you could join us tonight. We are going to take about 5 minutes to reset the space. You can help us out greatly by taking your chairs and folding them up and putting them against this side of the room. And then the signing will be right here. You can line up about like where the couch is and go back if you are so inclined. If you, for some reason, don't already have your copy of Some Kind of Famous, we've got plenty upstairs. We've also got Alicia's books upstairs. They will both be signing. Our events are made possible by sales. They allow us to host authors. They convince authors to come to us. They convince publishers to send authors to us. So thank you for, if you're interested in checking out any of these books, finding them here with us.